We reacted to it live yesterday, and this is a first, man. I mean, we've seen 10th overall drafted quarterbacks get replaced by first drafted overall quarterbacks. Josh Rosen by Kyler Murray, right?
Yep.
And we've seen Justin Fields drafted where he was drafted. Was that 11th overall, was it?
I think you're right about that.
Trying to get off the top of my head, like the Bears trade up to go get him and then stick with him and then get an opportunity for Caleb Williams. And they're like, via con Dios, sir. And we'll get an update on whether Fields is going to get a third straight start for the now 2-0 Steelers. But it's all a setup to say, I don't recall a first overall selection that a team trades so much capital to go get. So much. Including not just draft capital, but Caleb Williams has DJ Moore to throw to. I've never seen a team do that. Draft a quarterback and bench him 18 games in. 18 games in. Bryce Young went 2-14 last year, didn't play until the last preseason game. Looked pretty good in the preseason, and Dave Canales, the head coach, was brought in. He was brought in from Tampa with no head coaching experience in advance because of what he did for Baker Mayfield in Tampa and Geno Smith in Washington and in Seattle. Pardon me, we just spoke to Kalen DeBoer, so got that Washington on the brain. And 2 games in, he's looked lost. There's just no other way to put it. He looks lost, and he's benched. It's truly unbelievable. And unfortunately, he's also got the, for lack of a better analogy, the Trubisky thing going on, that the quarterback that the other team didn't take to take him is performing phenomenal.
Right. Future of the league.
Right. And the quarterback that the other guy is performing like is making it tougher for people like him and all the other rookie quarterbacks because of how C.J. Stroud has looked for Houston. Now, it doesn't help that the Carolina Panthers didn't surround Bryce Young with very much last year. And this year, we will see. Hold on a minute. We'll see about this year because Andy Dalton's about to take over. And we'll see if Andy Dalton can orchestrate this offense in a way that, say, Mayfield did and Geno Smith did, because Canales' offense looked pretty good with a veteran like Geno and a veteran like Baker running it. But, when Geno ran it, that's DK. That's Tyler Lockett. When Baker ran it, that's Mike Evans. That's Chris Godwin. We'll see what happens. But for the moment, it is just stunning. A stunner. A shocker. 18 games in that they decide to bench him. And one day after the head coach was asked, were you thinking about benching him in the game? No. Bryce Young is my quarterback. He's our quarterback. What about future? You're taking on the Vegas Raiders. The Condor. Christian Wilkins, Max Crosby just sacked Lamar Jackson twice, and he's tough to corral. This just in. He's a 2-time MVP of the league. 4 tackles for loss for Max Crosby. You're going to play Bryce Young? You thinking of starting him? He's our starter. Next day, benched. Canales explained his reasoning.
After yesterday, just went home, watched the film, had some conversations with coaches, with Dan Brandt. So had to gather a lot of information through this morning and made that decision after looking at it that this is the best decision for our group, for our team going forward.
Dave Tepper saying in the past that he gets consulted on the big decisions. Mm-hmm. What was his role in this as you guys talked about?
I want to keep that private. What I would like to say, though, is this is something after I watched the film, I looked at it, had a thought, started working on talking to the guys that we make decisions with. Certainly a lot of parties involved there. And ultimately this comes on me, and my number one responsibility is to help the Panthers win. And so this move, I believe, puts us in the best chance to do that this week.
I would agree. It does give them the best chance to win this week. This week being that right there. And listen, when an owner one and done's people like David Tepper has done in Carolina, and the coach off of a decision that is so wild that it's so shocking that is made, and it's a complete counter to what he has told the media the day before, it is obvious when everybody else out there thinks the owner pulled a code red or is pulling a string or whatever. I don't know, man. I would think
I don't know how you could think otherwise.
Because I would think the owner would say, too bad. I hired you to fix him. You fix him because we gave up the 9th overall pick and 61st overall pick in last year's draft, the 1st overall pick in this year's draft, and that pick has made Chicago fans nuts about their quarterback. And we have a 2nd round pick in next year's draft that we also gave up. And I kind of think we could use DJ Moore right now. And also, through everything, $38 million in cash has gone out the door. So you fix the kid. And I don't care. It's tough for me to watch, but Andy Dalton, really? I didn't hire you so you could turn to me just 2 games in and say, Andy Dalton's our quarterback. That is what I would think the owner somewhat impetuously might tell his coach. But the move's been made. Because at some point, like, how long do you stick with it? That's the point. How long do you stick with it? And the move, now that it's been made too, it's just, because we deal in narratives. Do you think, what are the odds? You tell me which narrative is going to come out of this.
Okay.
All right. One in which Bryce Young, one day, takes the Panthers exactly where they wanted to take them, which is deep in the playoffs, Super Bowl. He's a 1st overall selection, deserving of that selection, and plays better than C.J. Stroud one day. And the Panthers will just look back on this moment and say, that's the moment when we saved his career. We took him out when he was struggling. He watched Dalton do it. Canales is weaving the magic. We were able to win some games. He saw what needed to be done and took us to where we wanted to go. Or the alternative, which is he's been damaged. He's damaged goods in Carolina. And he's got to go somewhere else in order to be the Bryce Young that he can be.
He's the next Sam Darnold. I'll take the latter.
Right? And on top of it, I'm sorry. Go ahead, TJ.
No, I was going to say, I was with the former until you said that he would be better than CJ. I don't know if that's going to come.
That's what they evaluated him as.
Yeah, but I'm saying it could be the fact that he does get a reset and kind of is able to.
And here's what's most likely about this.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think? Dalton's going to last 14 games? 15 more games? You think he might get dinged up, hurt? Bryce Young goes back out there? Now he's the guy who got benched, looking just as lost. Yeah. What do you think? You think Dalton's going to play the rest of the year? 15 games?
That seems unlikely.
Yeah.
Okay, so then if that's unlikely, then what's the metric by which they're like comfortable putting Bryce back in there?
Last resort, break glass.
Because Dalton has shown that the roster is substandard around him?
Dalton gets injured. I think the only way Bryce Young plays again is if Andy Dalton gets hurt.
Well, that's a problem. He's the 1st overall pick of the draft. They gave up all this capital. That's a problem. That's what I'm saying is like, we have to win now. Do you really? Because you drafted a guy 1st overall and hired a first-time head coach with the leeway of knowing it's going to be dark before it gets light again.
True.
Troy won 1 game in his 1st year, right?
Yeah.
Look at him now. What are the odds that that's Bryce Young? Although Troy never got benched, or he's going to have to go somewhere else. And to admit that 2 games, or at least admit that that's a path. Just 2 games in, 18 games in his career. I've never heard of anything like it, man. This is a new one for me. Hour 2 coming up.
It doesn't seem like they're a well enough run organization to fix Bryce Young at the moment. I think that's just an honest assessment.
Or they're like, this isn't working. We gotta pull back. We gotta realize that, and we will rehabilitate him. And this is the guy to do it, positivity wise. But Andy Dalton is the one who's going to have to go into, like, what happens if Max Crosby gets a clean shot at him and they benched him and he's out there in Vegas looking just as bad as he did the first 2 games? What happens now?
What can you do?
Then they're going 0-17. That's what's happening.
And then they're going to draft somebody new.
Yeah. And Bryce Young gets Rosen.
Honestly, they could fall in love with Shador. They could fall in love
Any
with
of these
Ewers
guys.
or any of these guys.
Any of them. Yeah, any of them.
Whoever's going to be available first overall.
Because there's currently not a third quarterback on the depth chart.
There's not.
Well, there's one. They told you that kid Jack Plummer from Louisville. And the fact that they're thinking maybe he's the guy. I mean, Young is going to have to be. He's going to have to be active.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which means he could play Sunday. So the sit back and watch the veteran, that could last all of a quarter.
Or let's try to be positive. Maybe Dalton comes in, throws a couple tutties, and they pull up an upset.
And
maybe
That would be super fun.
Maybe.
And the alternative,
That would be fun.
And the alternative, unfortunately for everybody, was just let it keep riding. Which, as you know, in Vegas, sometimes that's a problem. That's how you lose your shirt. Catch the Rich Eisen Show every single day on the Roku channel, 12 to 3 Eastern, for free.